Sziasztok, ez itt az SEA Podcast több mint hoki, és a mai meghívottam Kevin Konstantin, aki jelenleg a Csíkszeredai Sportklub vezetőedzője, de hát láthattuk őt már nagyon sok helyen a világon. Kevin, welcome, and thank you for the acceptance that you accepted the invitation.
Good to be here.
Please tell me what inspired you to become a coach, an ice hockey coach?
Great question. When I finished playing, and I was drafted by Montreal and tried out for the Montreal Canadiens, didn't make it. So at about age 22, 23, for me, I thought hockey was done. And then I was living in California. Most people that know hockey know the U.S. won the Miracle on Ice Olympic victory over Russia in 1980. Yeah. You know, there's been movies made about that. Not as many people know that the U.S. also won a gold medal in the Olympics in 1960 in a rink in Squaw Valley, California. The rink was a great rink. It had three sides to it.
Okay.
It had a long side, two ends, but the third side was open, so you could watch a skiing event and a hockey game at the same time. Wow. And I wanted to see that rink, so I just walked in, having been out of hockey for 4 years. I walked in, talked to some people. They're like, "Why are you here?" I said, "This is a pretty famous rink. Just wanted to see it." "So you played hockey?" "Yes." "We need help. Can you help coach our little kids?" So I was a volunteer coach for a couple years before I ever got into actually coaching teams, and then started coaching junior hockey for a few years. And finally someone said that was as a volunteer too. So my first 3 years were a volunteer youth hockey coach. And someone said, "You look like you enjoy it. Why don't you try to get a job where you're paid to do this?" So eventually, that happened for me. So, a lot of players play in the NHL or play professional hockey, and from there they go right into coaching. Mine was a little different. I was out of hockey and became a volunteer coach long before I actually became a professional coach.
And where did you learn the coaching? I mean, you went to university, or you started just with this volunteering and then you had a mentor or somehow?
Yeah, I think a lot of coaches probably learn how to coach from either having played for a good coach and you learned a lot from that coach, or you become an assistant coach somewhere and you learn from the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was different. I didn't, I played for some good coaches and remember some things from those coaches, but I did most of my learning about coaching by reading books about football, American football, not soccer, American football, and reading books about basketball coaches. So Pat Riley, who coached the Los Angeles Lakers, his teams were called Showtime, or Bill Walsh, who coached the San Francisco 49ers to a number of Super Bowls. Reading and studying those coaches and the techniques of coaching. Of course, the strategies of hockey are different, but not the way you organize yourself as a coach, not the way you motivate players. Those are universal to all sports.
Yeah, basketball, it's close to ice hockey.
Yeah, and basketball does have some strategies that are somewhat similar. Same number of people, 5 minus the goalie. So I learned more about coaching by studying other coaches in other sports than I did actually learning from a hockey coach in a hockey setting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you had any mentor? Or idols, maybe?
Yeah, I think I tried to watch and learn from really studying the video of how other teams played, and then listening and borrowing anything from a coach you could. Scotty Bowman has the longest career coaching in the NHL, the most wins. No one will ever catch him, because you'd have to live to be over 1,000 years old to play or coach enough games to catch his records. But if there was ever a comment or anything made by any of those coaches, You always tried to steal it. I even had one coach say, the first time you use somebody else's ideas, another coach, you have to acknowledge that coach. You have to say, I learned it from Scotty Bowman. But he said, by the second time you're asked how you did it, just say you thought of it yourself. So, yeah, I don't know there's a lot of new ideas in hockey. Most ideas are copied from somewhere,
Mhm.
borrowed from people, learned, as you said, from a mentor. Um, so I think there was a lot of things I was ahead of a little bit in hockey. The use of statistics, I did for 20 years before people started to say, hey, there's analytics and a way to analytically, statistically look at how hockey players are doing. I'd been doing that for 20 years already. And probably just the use of video as a teaching learning tool. I think
Mhm.
I was 10 or 15 years ahead of other people um, at trying to take video and statistics and find a way to help teach the game of hockey through those avenues.
Yeah, I've been reading about this that you've been ahead of many people because of this. And in the world of hockey, many people says that um, you were way ahead of your time, basically, in using statistics, as you said, and the video editing and video analytics. So, how happened this? From where did you came?
I think it's because you asked in a previous question.
Yeah, yeah.
I think because my learning was done through basketball and football coaches and studying what they did,
And they
and
used.
they used
Okay.
video way more than hockey had.
Uh huh.
So I borrowed from those coaches before it became common practice to use those things in hockey. For example, football is a different game because you only play one game a week in American football.
Okay.
So in football, they actually take the video of the game and they watch every play. So you play a game on Sunday, you might have Monday off. Tuesday, you come in, and the whole team sits and watches every single play of that football game and
Hmm.
studies it. So we don't go to that extreme in hockey to watch every game, every play, all the time. But from that, the idea of there's things to learn from video seemed kind of logical to me.
Okay.
Um, the other thing is video's the most honest feedback a player can get because a player will often tell himself how he played or listen to his friends how he played or listen to a coach describe how he played, all of which is opinion on how a player played. But video's the actual honest truth because the video doesn't lie. It shows you exactly how you played. So there's an honesty for good or bad, depending on if you played well or not.
Yeah.
But there's an honesty to reviewing your game through video that keeps you, I think, on track with keeping your game, as strong as possible.
Um, what is the biggest challenge in coaching youth players compared to professional athletes? Because you've been starting with kids, as you said, and for a long time you've been working with the juniors.
Yeah. I think the challenge is when you're coaching younger players, youth, junior,
Okay.
often the only reference point they have would be whatever you're telling them. That's the first time sometimes they've heard a certain way to do things or a certain strategy on how to do things. Uh, I think sometimes when you're coaching a pro, and I'll give you an example. Let's say there's an NHL player that is making $1 million a year in his salary, and he's gotten himself to the NHL and gotten himself to a contract that's paying him $1 million a year for the next 5 years. And you come to that player and make a suggestion on how he plays, and it's different than the way he's played in the past. It's a different strategy. It's a different way to handle a situation. It's a different forecheck. Maybe he got to where he went with a one-man forecheck, and you introduce a two-man forecheck. So then there's some resistance to that. Because for a player, if he's already made it during a certain way and he's making $1 million a year doing it, why would he want to change? Why would he want to do it a different way when he's been really successful, both athletically successful and financial successful, doing it a certain way? Why do it a different way? So sometimes there's there's more salesmanship and there's more explaining to do with a professional player as to why your way would be a successful way to do it. Because a professional has more reference points, more ways to compare what you're saying to something he might have learned differently in the past. So there's more salesmanship and coaching at the pro level.
Okay. You had an NHL career also, and as I've been reading, you were the only coach in NHL history to take 2 8-seeded teams to first round Stanley Cup playoff upsets. It was with the San Jose Sharks and with the Pittsburgh over New Jersey.
Yeah.
You are still holding these records.
Well, it's interesting you say that because our playoffs start in 2 weeks. And we're a 6th seed playing a 3rd seed. So in some ways you go into that saying, well, are you good enough? That team is better than you. That team won more games than you did. That team scored more goals than you did. That's not going to be a formula for success. So sometimes it's good to have a background that, allows you to believe it is possible. So yeah, that's true that, yeah, I'm the only NHL coach who's taken some number 8 seeds and beat a number 1 seed and done it twice. But I think playoffs are different. That's one reason. The other reason is playoffs are a chance to start over. So whatever you've done in the regular season doesn't have to mean anything about how the playoffs are going. So you're kind of erasing the entire regular season. You're completely starting over. And the one thing I really believe is that when the underdog, in other words, the lower seeded team in the playoffs, can either get ahead in the series or can keep the series close, 1-1 or 2-1, or it's tied 2-2, I think the momentum and confidence changes to the underdog team. Because the team that's supposed to win is like, why is this so hard? Why are they ahead of us? Why is this series tied? We were supposed to be better. We were favored to win. And so the momentum, both certainly psychologically, the momentum favors the underdog team. So I think that's, part of the reason why, I've been able to help some underdog teams win in the playoffs.
You also collected some experience abroad, coaching in different countries, France, Switzerland, South Korea, Poland, Hungary, and now here in Romania. 41 years of coaching.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah. I don't know if that's good or bad. All it means is I'm old. I'd like it to mean I'm wise or smarter, but sometimes I just think it means I'm older. But I'll tell you, I can tell you how I feel about all of that. I feel like I'm one of the luckiest people to have walked on this planet Earth because I really have always loved hockey. It's really been all I've ever done. I've never really had an interest in doing anything else. So I've been able to do what I love and see the world at the same time, and experience different cultures and learn about different people's histories. And so that, how many people get to do that? You get to do what you love and see the world all in one package. Very few, very few. Very few. So I'm a really, really fortunate person. And the thing I really love about hockey is it transcends the cultures. It transcends the color of people's skin. It transcends the language you speak. It transcends the culture that you grew up in because um, the things that make you successful in hockey are universal, no matter what country you're in. The things that draw a team together are universal. So you can watch people of many different cultures, many different skin colors, many different languages, but they all seem to become really close when they're in a locker room. And when they work together, they all seem to have success. And those are universal things that are unique to the game of hockey. So if you said, were the cultures different everywhere you've been? I would say absolutely. And if you said, was the hockey culture different everywhere you've been? I'd say not a chance. The hockey culture's always been identical, always been exactly the same. The size of rinks in Europe are a little bigger than North America, so the style of hockey sometimes is slightly different. But everything else about how you're successful, how do you get along in a locker room, what do you find funny, how do you back each other up, what makes you successful, those things are absolutely true and absolutely the same in every single country I've been in. And that's part of why I love the game.
Um, it's very interesting that basically where you have been working, and I saw your work in Hungary and I saw your work now here in Csíkszereda. One thing that I've seen in both places are the young players who are getting into the big team. So how you integrate them into the team? What's your tactic basically in this way?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think there's always kind of a
We can talk also about Csíkszereda because this is like closer in time, so you can remember the players who are young players and must be integrated into the team. So
yeah, I think a couple things have to happen. One, there's always there's the rituals of hockey of how a young player what a young player has to do to be on a team. There's always a little extra work a young player has to do. Easy examples are maybe helping the equipment manager carry things on and off the bus, or picking up the pucks after a practice is over and bringing them back to the locker room. The young rookie first year players get tasked with some of those things as kind of a rite of passage to be on the team. And so I think those are good things. But at the same time, I think it's really important that when it comes to who's going to play in games, that the standard for that is the same no matter whether you've played 20 years or whether you're a young player. So there's no favoritism to your age about who gets to play in the games. That doesn't matter whether you're young or old. The tie, if people are completely equal, might go to a veteran player first. He might get the first opportunity. But if in any way a young player shows the capabilities and is as good as someone else, then the young player gets to play. He doesn't get persecuted. He doesn't get biased against because he's young. It's immaterial whether a player, how long he's played. If he can get the job done, then he can get the job done. So, and then, we try to make, we live with kind of three things you got to do. You got part of hockey's working. So how hard you play the game. Part of it's being detailed because that's how you form a team. You got to play within the structure of the team. In other words, we don't want 5 individuals out there doing things. We want 5 players doing things in a organized, structured team, systematic way because that's powerful more powerful than 5 players playing separate. So you got to understand details. And then, there's a lot of the games just how fast your mind works. Hockey's a really fast game, mostly because of players' minds. There's speed, so people think, well, if you skate fast, you're a fast team, and there's how quick the puck moves around the rink, so there's puck speed. But the thing that makes the game fast is your ability to process information. So it's your mind speed. Um, and so I think because of that, whoever can adapt to those things ends up being the players that get ice time. And that's not a restriction that is that sometimes young players have a problem with. In fact, a lot of times those structured and detailed way of playing is something they can latch onto and grab onto. And if they can, then we don't care. We don't care where you're from, import or local player. We don't care your age, 15-year veteran or first-year player. We're just looking for the group that helps the team have success. So,
In your work now at Csíkszereda, how many young talents ended up in the team since the
well,
beginning of the season?
different,
Are you counting them?
yeah, different parts of the year, it's been different players, but also the league is set up on a point system where you only get to dress 56 points in your lineup every night, and each player counts for a certain amount of points, and the older players count for more points. So and it's set up on purpose to give you a chance to put some young players in the lineup because they carry less points. And so sometimes the only players that can dress are as a young player because, a veteran might be a 3.5 in points and a young player might be a 0.5 in points. And so trying to fit all of that under 56, which is the maximum points you can have, sometimes the young player is put in just because he doesn't eat up as many points in your overall roster. But generally speaking, our young players have played because they've deserved to be in the lineup. And we've had, almost every single game this year, we've had at least one and sometimes 3 or 4 players that are playing their first year of pro hockey. That's a good thing for our team. It's a good thing to have kind of a youthful enthusiasm around the locker room. And it's also needed just for the future of the team so that, over the next, whatever, 2, 5, 10, 20 years, you have replacements for, and there's players on our team that are 35 or 36 that probably will only play for 1 or 2 more years. And we've got to bring along some young players that are going to take their place just for the future of the team.
Yeah. Um, till now, this season was like a kind of roller coaster because you had ups and downs. And how did you saw all these from the bench?
Yeah. Last year was pretty fun. It was, it was fun, I think, to watch a team that lost its first 10 games have the best record in the league for the next 35 games. So that almost worst to first. And the way I saw last year's team was, there was some really talented guys. Levin led the league in scoring. I think Schofrin, who's from this area, is one, if not the best player in the league. So there was some pretty talented players here that made all of that possible. And I think the only thing I brought was just a little bit of structure to a group that had a lot of hockey talent. The difference between the two teams this year and last year is those players were gone. So the team lost its 7 best players. And I'm not sure we ever replaced them with equal talent. Not that we didn't replace them with some good hockey players, but we don't have 11, a leading scorer in the league. Schofrin, he had so many different elements to his game. He could go play a physical game and have 6 or 7 huge hits a night, but he might score the winning goal too. So he had an interesting and very valuable combination of talent. And we just never replaced that. It just didn't happen. So, if you look back when I first came in and we only had a couple import players, I didn't know if we'd finish anything other than last when I first looked at the roster in September when I got here. And if you remember early in the season, if you followed our team at all, we had a weekend at home where we lost 4-0 and 8-0 by a total of 12-0. And you're looking at that and you're like, we might be the worst team in the league. So, we needed to just get to work and try to figure out how that group could figure out a way to win. And it never has been at any point during the year, nor will it be in the playoffs, that we could score goals. We just couldn't. I just don't think goal scores. I think coaching it's easier to kind of get a team to work and be structured than it is to help them score. I think scoring is more natural to the talents of the players and something a coach has a less chance of impacting in a significant way. I think a coach can be part of that, but not the way a coach can help a team work and play defensively. So the only way our team was going to be successful was to find a way to keep the game close. And at the end of the year, if you look, we did end up being the second best defensive team in the league. We gave up the second least amount of goals, which is a complete necessity because the team never did nor ever will score a lot of goals. So our wins were 1-0, 2-1, 3-2. Very few games that it was 6-5 or 7-3 or anything like that. And so, that made stretches tough where we'd play pretty good hockey, maybe even outchance a team, maybe outshoot a team, but lose, 2-1 because we couldn't convert our chances into goals. But, eventually we did what we needed to do to make the playoffs. And the hope is, sometimes the playoffs are a little bit of that style of hockey that are a little lower scoring. And that's what we built our success on, is working, keeping the game close, playing good defensively, trying to find a goal or two along the way. And sometimes that's what playoffs are all about. So we're just hoping that the whole season built us into being ready to play the style of hockey that is generally played in the playoffs. And that's the great hope we have going into the playoffs.
Yeah, you made it up till the playoffs. What about these transfer period in January? That I guess you wanted some new players, but there were some problems. What happened?
Well, I think, that I think the rules as to how many players, how often you can change players, the total number of players you can change. Um, I think along the way that changed within the league, and kind of differing rules were made. And so that caused a little bit of challenge in terms of trying to get imports, because there was deadlines and so forth where we ran out of the opportunity to try to change the team. So, in my opinion, the process for the team in getting players it started pretty late. I think the key time to get players for hockey teams is generally the March to June timeframe. And in the case of the pro team here in town, there was a whole idea of the city taking over the team and the management of the team changing and the way the team's going to be run changed. And so when all of that dust settled on who's going to be in charge of managing the team this year, the team was already into August without the chance to go get players. So the whole process this year started behind, and at no point do I think that we were able to catch up with that. The players that were available are less when you start trying to get players in August, September, and October than when everybody's looking for a job in May and March and April and so forth. So I certainly hope moving forward, going into next year, even though our focus right now is just on the playoffs, you certainly hope that there's a lesson learned from this last year, and that, the way the players are acquired, especially the imports, There's a great group of local players here, as represented on the national team, where Chixerda has the most national team players. So there's a good group of local players, but the success of the team is and will always still, even though there's a great contribution from those local players, it'll still be dependent on import players. It'll still be dependent on bringing in somewhere between 5 and 8 players that aren't local to Romanian hockey, to Chixerda area, that are still going to have to do a bulk of the work, especially in terms of the offensive side of the game and helping us be a good offensive team. And so that whole process, hopefully there's some stability in terms of the management of the team, and that whole process can start months earlier this coming year than it did in the past.
Among the playoff teams, Sportklub has the fewest foreigners, and you still made it into the playoffs.
Yeah, as you mentioned, this year was challenging, big for all the reasons we mentioned. You said it was a little up and down in terms of record. You're right. Scoring goals was challenging for us. You're right. The way the players were acquired during the course of the year got started a little late. And so, last year was so fun because at least when I got here, the team was at a real low point. So any success was fun, let alone having the best record in the league over the next, 35 games. So that also spoiled everybody in terms of maybe what to expect and so forth. So then you come in this year and it's a different year and a new season, and it's really challenging. So, the idea behind a team is figure out what works for that particular group and that particular team. And sometimes I think I know for a fact, to learn a style of play, in other words, learn a team's systems and details, takes 8 weeks. So that automatically is 2 months, just for everybody to learn how you're supposed to play within the strategy of this team. I mean, if you follow sports and you follow, Luka Doncic right now going to the LA Lakers in basketball, him and LeBron James are talking about all the reads and how long it's going to take to learn all the defensive reads and the communication they have to be a good defensive team. In hockey, that's 5 to 8 weeks to learn that. And then it's another month to figure out which players should play in certain situations, a key penalty kill, a key faceoff in your own end, the next power play. And that's only learned not through the intelligence of coaching. It's learned through trial and error. And so that takes another month. So you really don't know how to operate as players or coaches with a group till you've been with them 3 months. And so, that's kind of in a way what happened to our team this year. And we just hope that in terms of the playoffs coming, that, we're more ready to handle that than we were. And we certainly are than we were back in October when we lost 12-0 at home in a 2-game weekend series. We're certainly a long, long ways past that, but it takes more time than people think. I mean, you don't have to look any further than the Los Angeles Lakers trade right now and in basketball. That hasn't worked so far, but it will. But it takes time. So even in hockey, if you went out and found the 2 or 3 best players that have ever come and played here, that wouldn't solve problems immediately. It would still take some time to get some chemistry and knowledge about how you want to do things as a team. So it takes more than talent. It takes talent and teamwork combined, and that takes time. And it took time this year.
Taking all these into consideration that you've been talking till now, how is the chemistry between you and the management of the Sportklub?
I don't know. I don't live in that world. So I would say that there is no answer to that.
Okay.
Because during the course of the season, I think, even the other day, I showed in preparation for the playoffs, you know, my two assistant coaches, which have done a great job this year, are new to me. It's our first year working together. And so in preparation for the playoffs, we were talking about a couple years ago when I coached Fairvar in the ice hockey league, a team that had never won a playoff round ever.
Yeah.
And we were able to go all the way to the finals. And they were asking me about the process of preparing for the playoffs. And so I just dug into my computer and I said, well, here's everything we did. It's all digitized on my computer to sometimes go back and try to rethink what you did in the past to remind you what to do in the future. And so Robbie, my assistant, said, you know, can I get a copy of that stuff and take it home and look at it? And I said, sure, and gave him a copy of it. He came back the next day and he said, how did you possibly do all of that? How did you have time to possibly do all of that preparation? And I said, well, it's not easy, but you know, you just bury your head into your work and you do it. I'm here without family. And so I just go to the rink and I eat occasionally and I sleep a little bit. And other than that, I love hockey, so I coach. But my job is literally, when I'm here, I'm 24/7 thinking, working, and coaching and preparing. And so there's zero time in my day to have any involvement with management. So there just literally is no relationship with management, not for dislike of any people. There just isn't any time. I don't have time to sit and BS with anybody. So you know, those things come in the off season. They come when you talk about players a little bit. And so there is some dialogue and there is some interaction. I'm not trying to say there's none, but there's very little compared to how much time is spent just doing the work of actually coaching the players. So 99% of my time here, I'm coaching.
Okay. Kevin, thank you very much for coming.
Yep.
And wish you all the best
and
thank success.
You. Very good.
Thank you again.
Okay. Take care.
Nektek pedig köszönjük szépen a részvételt a mai podcastben is. Ne feledjétek, követhettek bennünket YouTube-on, Spotify-on, és ott vagyunk a Facebookon is.